Making headlines this week, Euro collapse. Sources indicating that this may be among the biggest initial signs of arrests and the new economy. Energy of change. How humanity reacts to unfolding changes will determine how peacefully a new world unfolds. Sneaking up on the elitist cabal. Despite attempts to keep Republican U.S. presidential candidate Ron Paul out of the media, he continues to wake up Americans. And speaker, author, and channel Mark Kimmel joins the show to share his messages from those on board the starship Athabascan and more.
With news around, upon, within, and beyond our planet, the program making disclosure official. This is Cosmic Vision News. Here is Jeffrey West.
Greetings and blessings to all. Many eyes seem to be on Europe at this time as numerous events appear to be moving toward a collapse of the euro, which will in turn give the 2-week warning to North America to prepare for the inevitable shift to a new economy, which will trigger the mass arrests, transitional governments, the new economic system, and the disclosure of our galactic families. Earlier this week, the Financial Times, FT.com, and the Galactic Free Press were reporting a backlash towards the fiscal austerity measures being taken in France and the Netherlands, and how politicians in both countries are having a hard time finding support as the Eurozone slides deeper into financial crisis. This was highlighted dramatically in the collapse of austerity negotiations in the country of the Netherlands, which is considered to be one of the most fiscally disciplined within the Eurozone. The Dutch Prime Minister, Mark Rutte, submitted his resignation, opening the door for elections there. In what may be a sign of the transition unfolding to the new banking system, Moscow's stock exchange, MICEX, is currently shut down. In a posting on the MICEX page on April 23rd, they say that the situation has been recognized as a technical emergency and trading has been suspended for the time being. On another page, it is interesting to note that they announce that on May 7th and 8th, a certain series of bonds will no longer be traded. Is this a transition to the new economic system, and are the bonds that are being stopped from trade aligned to the dark cabal? Anyone having more information on this story can please contact Cosmic Vision News. The fact that this has happened in Russia is also significant because in his weekly update earlier this week, former Asian Bureau Chief for Forbes magazine, Benjamin Fulford, was reporting that the recent IMF and World Bank meetings in Washington were being reported as a success in the Western propaganda media, but there were conditions set out by Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa, an alliance known as BRICS. The disagreement centers around voting rights, with one example given that the UK, which has a smaller economy than Brazil, has twice the voting rights. At this time, this is not really significant because according to Fulford, the IMF and the World Bank are becoming increasingly less relevant. Fulford goes on to add that the IMF, the so-called lender of last resort in the global economy, is going around with a begging bowl at this time, making it obvious to all that this institution is no longer at the top of the international financial food chain. The Eurozone was one of the dark cabal's pet projects to begin setting up global financial domination. This control is now collapsing. Last week, CVN reported how the fractional margin system of banking is fraudulently creating money out of thin air and enslaving humanity through unlawful debt. Ireland and Iceland have already called out the Eurocrats on their fraudulent loans, and this is why they have not been in the media. Greece is looking to follow suit. What happens in the Eurozone will set the stage for all that is to follow. Recall what Pentagon whistleblower Drake had to say to David Wilcock a few weeks back.
The European Union is very close to collapse in terms of the euro. As the euro goes, so goes the dollar in terms of our economy. Now, the other part of this is that you got about a 2-week span before it starts hitting here.
On April 8th, in an interview, Drake outlined a 45 to 60-day period in which things may begin to get underway. As of today, that timeline would now be in the 30 to 45-day range. Although the interview was interrupted, he recently reconfirmed that this timeline was still on.
This may have already been answered. Somebody was asking if we're still looking at doing things in April, and that question has been asked and answered with the 30 to 45-day time frame from April 8th when that statement was made. And yes, Drake answered that question. He said, yes, we're still on the timetable that was given.
Well, to go along with the things that have been happening, there's another round getting ready to fall, kind of like the other shoe. I'm not at liberty right at this point to tell you about it, but in a couple of days you'll see it happen just like it did, as I told you before, it would happen with the central banking system. And the second shot across the bow ought to sink the boat. I've been getting a combination of interests basically from all over the world. We're planning to have a combination of conference calls, and I intend to address different countries in terms of them being able to use a portion or something similar to our system in order to set themselves free as well. There's a variety of things that will happen in the next 2-3 days. Everybody will be delighted with it. There are some fun and games involved, as well as some real nicely crafted, legitimate actions that will be taken that everybody is going to enjoy thoroughly. We will all witness those publicly to an extent. Now, one of the things that's going to happen here shortly is that the Fed, or Federal Reserve, or Central Bank, as you know it, is going to have such serious problems that they're going to be required to accidentally leak some of the information as to what's going on. Their first move will be an attempt at discrediting, but the problem is that it's all valid, it's real, and it is happening. So everybody grit your teeth, bear with it. It won't take too long. We'll get through this, from what I'm seeing, fairly nicely, cleanly, and peacefully.
So what we think we know up to this point is this. A Eurozone collapse will sound the signal that the changes are about to come. With these changes, there are going to be mass arrests of those who have not already resigned voluntarily. This is going to trigger a whole series of events that are going to introduce incredible changes and benefits for our planet and for those of humanity who are ready and willing to live in a more peaceful, healthy, and abundant planet. This also includes the disclosure of our galactic families. In a recent webinar, Sheldon Neidl, who appeared on Cosmic Vision News last week, offered a proposed timeline of events that may occur over the coming months. This timeline seems to blend with the timelines of several others who are commenting on what is about to happen. Now keep in mind that timelines are not firm. What does or does not happen depends a lot on how humanity reacts and what energies they put into the unfolding events. Higher energies of love and the letting go of fear will go a long way to bringing a beautiful planet into reality much more quickly with less chaos for all.
As we sit here in late April of 2012, 3 things have already happened. 1, the new system of finance and monies have manifested on still levels where they are not public, but they are there. Various nations are beginning to take that energy because they know it's starting to manifest and have utilized it. Example is what's going on in Iceland right now. Another example is what last year the Irish did. Another example is what the Greeks are going through. We can continue on this on a global basis. We can talk about the fact that China right now is in the midst of a vast governmental power struggle about the nature of the future of China. And we can also state that the nature of what's going to happen to China ultimately depends upon the secret societies and the financial resources and spiritual reservoir of the Ascended Masters. There are various things which I can't really talk about that much, which are now happening, which will ultimately lead to the change of the governance of China. That hasn't happened fully yet, but aspects of it are now happening because The chaos going on in China is a sign of all of it. And of course, the West and the Western media are not covering this because they do not want to give a sign that the most populous nation on the planet has nearly 60 to 70% of all the manufacturing power is about to go into a vast change. This is part of the thing we're talking about, new governance and power. Right now, major banks in the world are on the verge of being changed to new membership. That's why I'm saying by the time spring is over, we should see the proclaiming of a new banking system formally. Mass arrests are weeks away, but they are about to happen. With the rise of new governance, we are going to see UFO disclosure. Now, once UFO disclosure occurs, it changes the entire world. The Galactic Federation is waiting for this for two purposes. One, we need as a people to formally be told that we are in a transition from being limited consciousness to what all that means to being fully conscious and what all that means. And it doesn't just mean a spiritual and emotional change. It means a massive physical change. And it involves the entire human genome. It involves the entire energy pattern of how our cultural societies operate. So this is no small matter. That's why disclosure is such an important part of this whole process. Now, once these new governances are in power by the end of spring, which is when they should happen, we have disclosure, we have governance, we have new banking, we have the mass arrests beginning just before these governances are proclaimed. Then after that in the summer, we will have, this is, as I said, is proposed times for scenario. Trial dates are going to be set. Release of secret technology. A new business and financial infrastructure in place. And now comes that most important part. Meetings with Earth-based members of the space and spiritual families. The banking system, which is the key, money on this limited conscious society is the key. Under new management simply means the Ascended Masters, with their vast pool of resources, will create situations which will force bank managements to force bankruptcies and create new management and reorganize the banks. That's a basic part of what the new economic system is all about. So basically for the rest of 2012, after these new governments, we will see complete major reforms. We will clean Gaia's air, water, and soil. There will be the formal first contact announcements by the Galactic Federation. It may take a little longer than this, but it is coming right now. And once it starts, it'll be like the first domino falling. It'll happen pretty fast. But remember, all this divine intervention is for one thing, and never lose sight that this is what it's all about. Turning our world from a world of material divisions and limitations into a world of love and full consciousness.
Sheldon Neidl plans to offer more on this subject in his webinar next month. You can go to www.paoweb.com to get that information when it's available. CVN is making attempts to contact several people who may potentially offer more timeline-related information to these current events. No matter who or where you are, you have likely been noticing and feeling that things are much different now than they were, even from as little as a year ago, or even a month ago. What is happening, and why do things seem to be happening so quickly? There are several answers to this. It may help first of all, to understand a little bit of the history of change and why, until recently, it has taken so long. Humans have been conditioned to resist change. Societies have been created, structured, and engineered to keep people in debt, in fear, and in separation. In the past, it would take years and even decades for information and messages to spread to enough of the population to begin effecting a dramatic societal change. Governments that are allegedly democratic have forgotten that it is they who serve the people, and it is not the people who serve them. If and when a time did come for a revolution, the establishment would use that as a justification to use force, create prisons, and inflict harm upon those who challenge the structures, reminding people that you should be fortunate to have what you have. The Internet has become the tool of awakening, allowing more people to find more information quickly and share it. Many messages bringing many truths are widely circulating the planet at this time. Like it or not, and ready or not, a massive paradigm shift is unfolding. An open heart and mind will benefit you because, as Drake said in last week's show,
the change, as I said, is going to be extreme and extraordinary. You're not going to believe what's coming. And it's nice. Believe me, all of it is really cool. You're going from a debt system to an equity system. It's an extraordinary change, and it's going to screw up everything in terms of what people are familiar with to an extent, but they're going to like it.
Change is natural. It is the process of life, and change is also what defines us. It is our resistance to change that traps us in the spirals of energies that are not beneficial, except to teach us more about ourselves so that we can move forward if we choose. Life is the actions and interactions of energy upon other energy. The challenge is, how can one choose when one is not given all the options from which to make that choice? The knowledge that we are not alone has been kept hidden from most of humanity. Those who have controlled this information have known for a long time that if humanity was to awaken to their true nature and the knowledge of who they really are, their power over them would be gone. Thus, it was necessary for them, the elitist cabal, to take increasingly more drastic steps to control the masses because they could not stop completely the awakening that has been slowly moving around the planet for at least the last 10 to 15 years especially. More and more, people are beginning to see through the lies, frauds, and crimes of this elitist and dark cabal that has hijacked all of the institutions that have had the greatest influence over and impact upon humanity. In a recent message from Brenton, a member of our galactic family on board a ship called the Athabantian, Brenton shared this message through Mark Kimmel.
Little that your national media would have you believe about the current situation in the U.S. is true. Some of what you are reading and viewing on the internet is misinformation. Be discerning. Your politics are based on power struggles between the wealthy and powerful. Nothing more. Politicians are not paying attention to the needs of the populace. Their legal systems have been subverted to the needs of the wealthy. The world monetary system is near collapse. Most religions continue to flog old dogma rather than attending to the spiritual needs of their followers. You are being fed lies about science, history, medicine, and much more. Those in power and wealth are desperately holding on to what they have as they make preparations to survive the coming transformation.
In the previous story, we revealed that whatever is to happen will depend upon how humans react to it. Now, this may be hard for many to understand. Change is energetic, it is scientific, and it is spiritual. Dr. Bruce Lipton, a former researcher and author of the book, The Biology of Belief, talks about the new science of epigenetics, which has evolved from the old science of genetics.
My history was based on cloning stem cells. A lot of people think stem cells are a new understanding in science, but I was cloning stem cells 43 years ago in 1967. And through my research, I found a different path in understanding medicine and health with a different view on genetics, which is now called epigenetics, the new science. In school, most people learn the science of genetics, which is the belief that genes control our traits. This science is really based on the fact that we get our genes from our mother and father at the moment of conception, and that these genes at that moment of conception actually will determine the rest of our lives in regard to our physical, emotional, and behavioral characteristics. A new science is called epigenetics. And epigenetics is an understanding that genes are not self-actualizing, meaning genes do not turn on and off. Genes are just blueprints. And the significance of that is that in order to engage a blueprint, it's not the blueprint's activity, it's the contractor's activity, the one who reads the blueprint that controls the blueprint. So in epigenetics, it's a science of how environmental information selects the genes and can modify the readout of the genes. And this becomes very significant because in genetic control, the old story, we are victims of our genetics. And the new story, epigenetics, because we can change the readout of the genes, we can then become masters of our genetic. And this becomes important because we actually control our health with our beliefs, our perceptions, and our attitudes about life. In the world of science that I grew up in, the mechanisms of how life worked were based on what we call Newtonian physics. Newtonian physics is a science that emphasizes the material physical world. So according to Newtonian physicists, if you look at a body, it's like a machine made out of chemicals and controlled by genes. And therefore, we look at the nature of the physical activity of the body in regard to its chemistry as controlling its life and its functions. However, there's been a change in our understanding of mechanisms. And rather than the Newtonian physics, this information has been updated by what we call quantum physics. Quantum physics recognizes that although we see an atom as a physical structure, when quantum physicists wanted to find out what the atom was made out of, when they looked inside, rather than finding physical particles, they found that the atom was made out of vibrational energy. And all of a sudden, when you understand this, if matter is made out of energy, then everything in the universe is made out of energy. And therefore, it becomes important to understand that energy is very powerful in influencing what we call matter. So Newtonian physics says matter can only be influenced by other matter. And quantum physics says, no, matter can be influenced by the invisible energy fields. And therefore, a new kind of healing is available to us using energy vibration rather than physical chemicals. And it turns out that energy vibration as a means of communication is 100 times more efficient than trying to communicate with the body through chemistry. So we have a new understanding of how to control our body, and it's through energy fields and vibrations, which include thoughts. In the world that we live in, which is based on Newtonian physics, where matter is primary, and you mix this with an understanding from Darwinian theory that we're in a competition for fitness and survival, and I would ask a person in this world, and I say, well, how do I know how fit you are? And in this world, you say, well, I am very fit because I have this much matter, because matter represents the world. And the more fitness you have, the more matter you have. Matter, in our case, is represented by money, because that's what you buy the matter with. So the more money you have in this world, then, according to the Darwinian principle, then the more fitness you express. But in a world based on quantum physics, which is based on energy, then there are things that are much more important than the physical realm. And some of the things that we understand in the nature of energy are emotions and feelings, such as love and beauty. These are expressions of energy. And in a world of quantum physics, we start to recognize that this is more important than the actual physical possessions. So as we move from this world into the future world on quantum physics, we will surely emphasize more the nature of love and feelings and energy and beauty and harmony over the money and the material expressions that we look at today.
The science that is being kept hidden from the people of the world is the science that shows people we can directly influence our bodies, the immediate world around us, and the world at large, using merely the energies that are already present. Greg Braden, another scientist, researcher, and lecturer, brings in the spiritual aspect of science.
Well, almost universally, ancient texts and traditions have reminded us that we are connected. They've said that we are one, that we are part of our world, that we're part of one another, that we're part of the earth and the changes in the earth. And what I've found is, over the last 22 years, as I've traveled nearly every continent of the earth and spoken to people from so many different traditions and cultures, is that people really want to believe that. They want to believe, and they like to believe that we're truly connected, but they need a reason for that belief. In the last years of the 20th and now the first years of the early 21st century, science is now giving us that reason for our logical mind to make the connection, to see how we're related and how we influence the world, and how by honoring that connection through our hearts, we literally have the power to influence the very fields of this planet to sustain life in the world, sustain the health and the healing and the well-being of our bodies. And it's all about the magnetic fields of the Earth. Where this really came into focus was around the events of September 11th, 2001. It was during that time that the United States has two satellites. They're called the GOES, G-O-E-S, Geosynchronous Environmental Satellites, I believe is what they're called. One positioned in the northern hemisphere, one positioned in the southern hemisphere. And the role of these satellites is to measure the magnetic fields of the Earth and send back readings every 30 minutes. And those readings normally fall within a certain range of data that scientists are relatively used to seeing. Well, it was in September of 2001 that scientists began to see some readings that were off the map, just off the scale compared to what they'd seen in the past. And they said, well, what's happening? What is it that could be influencing the magnetic fields of the entire planet to such a degree that we're seeing these big spikes that our satellites are sending back? We've never seen these before. They overlaid the data from the satellites onto a calendar of months and days, and lo and behold, what they found is that the spike was occurring precisely during the time of September 11th, 2001, and even more precisely that the first spike occurred 15 minutes after the first plane hit the first tower in the World Trade Center. Now, the reason this is so important to a scientist is because for 300 years, our science has been based on two false assumptions. The first false assumption is that everything is separate from everything else, that what happens in one place has no effect on what happens anywhere else, and if it looks like it does, it's only a coincidence. The second false assumption is that our inner experiences of thought, feeling, emotion, and belief have no effect on the world beyond our bodies. Based on those two false assumptions that have been accepted for 300 years by scientists, I can see why there would be a disconnect when they're looking at magnetic fields of the Earth spiking precisely the moment the human emotion of the planet is focused on a disaster. This led to a series of studies, and the bottom line to the studies is this. What they found is that it is human emotion, specifically the magnetic fields produced by the human heart during certain kinds of emotion, that now are documented as extending far beyond our bodies into the physical world, and now to such a degree that our satellites hundreds of miles above the surface are able to pick these up. This has led to a number of studies now showing that when a certain number of people come together and they choose in a moment of time to create a precise emotion in their hearts, that emotion literally can intentionally influence the very fields that sustain the life on planet Earth. These fields are now implicated in everything from the immune response of humans throughout the planet, climate, weather patterns, cycles of war in peace, our ability to solve problems, our cognitive abilities. All of these, as different as they sound from one another, are all linked to our relationship to the magnetic fields of the Earth. So what makes this so beautiful is every human on the planet is linked to the field. But not every human on the planet has to be consciously aware of their relationship to benefit from what a relatively few number of people come to understand. And the bottom line is this, is that when we choose to feel feelings that create what is called coherence in our bodies, coherence is the language, the quality of the language between our heart and our brain. Certain kinds of heart-based experiences, such as appreciation, gratitude, forgiveness, care, compassion, those are the ancient understandings that have always been taught in the truest traditions of our past, and now our own science is finding that those same traditions are now documenting this very real effect in our hearts. When we can feel those feelings in our bodies, they're mirrored in the field, and everyone benefits from the experience of relatively few.
And that coherence is now manifesting all over the world with people coming together, holding the energies of love, peace, and harmony. Only now are people beginning to grasp the scope and magnitude of the changes now unfolding upon our planet and within human and planetary consciousness. Change is feeling and becoming more evident from as far away as the galactic center of our universe to the very energetic systems within our bodies. In between, there are changes that are planetary, national, societal, familial, and individual. Arguably, we are in uncharted waters, although many will say that in previous lives we have experienced similar events and opportunities. Society has been set up to ensure that humanity could not and would not evolve beyond the control and power that has been set up by an elitist cabal. In another act of coherent energy, the voices and the people are speaking loudly and clearly all over the planet, and congratulations once again to the people and the country of Norway. In a true demonstration of modeling peace, love, and harmony, over 40,000 Norwegians came together to sing a song and declare that they would not be held hostage to hatred, violence, and fear. The song is hated by a mass murderer, Anders Breivik, who is on trial for the murder of 77 adults and children at a political retreat operated by the governing party last year. The elitist cabal attempted to coerce the Prime Minister into adopting more violent security policies, and the leader defiantly declared that Norway would not embrace draconian security state measures adopted by the cabal in other countries. In big ways, the small countries of the world are bringing down structures of enslavement, debt, violence, and hatred, while embracing true peace and love. While the mainstream media continues to promote the establishment candidate Mitt Romney, the pseudo-quiet revolution that bears the name Ron Paul continues to steam forward. U.S. Republican presidential candidate Ron Paul's website continues to show stories where his public appearances are pulling in 2,000 to 5,000 people, and even up to 6,000, as demonstrated the other night. It is quite clear that at the grassroots level, Ron Paul's message is getting to the people, even if the mainstream media pretends not to notice. Paul is also successfully winning delegates at the county and city levels as part of a strategy for his team to win the upcoming leadership convention. The Youth for Ron Paul national movement has prepared quite extensively for this moment, and it is posturing Paul for a possible upset of Romney come convention time. There are several reasons why this story is significant. One is that the movement is more than about Paul himself. People are understanding the significance now of a limited government and one that honors the Constitution. Dr. Paul, the only candidate remaining who was a veteran, is also the only candidate campaigning for cutting back on the military. More veterans and soldiers are supporting Paul than any other candidate at this time. This marks a strong shift in the consciousness of the people, in the military and the general population of the U.S. Even with predictions of mass arrests and a new economy, this news is very good for the disclosure of our galactic families because it shows the emotional state of the people. The population is ripe for change, and they are tired of being enslaved. They are standing up and speaking out, and this was exactly what numerous messages from our galactic families have been saying, that they cannot help us until we demonstrate a willingness and desire to help ourselves.
Events on Earth are leading the way to a glorious transformation of all. You have the opportunity to participate in that transformation in a very special way. Please, for the sake of all of us who are involved, become a part of this process. You are the ones in physical form that are requested to raise your vibrations, to integrate with the higher realms, and to lead all to a wondrous new civilization. In doing so, you will initiate a wondrous way of being for all.
That was Ta, a member of our galactic families aboard the starship Athabantyan, communicating in a recent message through Mark Kimmel. Mark will be joining the show shortly to comment more on his connections to our galactic families. In another example of North American mainstream media cover-ups, this one shifts to Canada. Recently, the students of the province of Quebec went out on strike of sorts to protest the government's plans to raise tuitions by up to 75%. Combine this with a recent Earth Day protest event, and you get 250,000 people standing up and speaking out. The protest was likely the largest in Quebec and arguably the largest in Canada in a very long time, and perhaps in history. It has the makings of becoming a Canadian Spring, and yet the mainstream media still plays out on the violence instead of truly investigating the issues. This is yet another example of how the corporate media reports only what will ultimately benefit their profit margins. Perhaps one surprise was that the Roman Catholic Church was officially supporting the protest. The Canadian government, meanwhile, is not immune from scandal at this time either, facing a severe backlash that the governing Progressive Conservatives under Stephen Harper allegedly sent out robocalls to homes of people who told canvassers that they would not support the Conservatives. The robocalls advised people that polling station addresses had been changed or voting times had been changed. It is speculated that Harper could lose the seats necessary to maintain his majority. Harper is a Bilderberg member and attended a Bilderberg meeting in 2003, being groomed for future leadership shortly before becoming party leader and then winning several minority governments. Harper has been accused of being dictatorial, placing his team on a tight leash about talking to the media and public while also preventing the Commissioner of the Royal Canadian Mounted Police from talking to the public and media without first getting permission from the Prime Minister's office. Is he trying to prevent the RCMP from participating in the coming global arrests? It was also in 2003 that both Harper and former Australian Prime Minister Howard were found to have delivered exactly the same speech concerning Iraq, literally word for word, showing conclusively that someone beyond the controls of both governments is pulling the strings and manipulating public speeches made by governments behind the scenes. It can easily be seen these days that Canada is perhaps no longer, and arguably never was, the true North, strong and free. Mark Kimmel, author, channel, and speaker on global change, awakening, and our galactic families. He is also the founder of the Institute of Light, dedicated to energizing Earth's transformation. All links to his institute and his work will be posted on numerous sites, including the blog at Greenprint for Life tomorrow morning. Mark is here to share some information, some messages, and an exciting conference that he is organizing. Welcome to the show, Mark.
Thank you very much, Jeff. It's my pleasure to be here. This is quite an interesting opportunity for me. I want you to know this is the first interview that I have given in about 3 years now. It is interesting to listen to your previous people. Some of the things are very much the same as they were 3 years ago, and some of the things are very much changed. I look upon things at this moment as the development of what I will call a perfect storm, in that if we get beyond the economy, which I think has been very well discussed earlier in this hour, and if we get beyond some of the other more third-dimensional kind of things that are happening, the government and those types of things, and we look a little bit further, we see that we have an environmental crisis that is simply being ignored by most of people, most of the politicians, because they are in the pockets, shall we say, of the wealthy who have no desire to do anything about the environment. Another aspect of the perfect storm would be the pending earth changes. Everybody is aware of the unusual weather we're having. We're having an extraordinary number of earthquakes around the globe. Not only the very large ones that get all the press, but literally hundreds, thousands of earthquakes, more than the typical average per year. And this is building a crescendo. We have a very unusual activity coming from the sun. We have tremendous amounts of electromagnetic radiation hitting the planet at this time. Most unusual. We haven't had that before. So you combine all these different things and you get, I think, a very unusual moment in history that we are faced with and that we have to come to terms with. A very wonderful time to be alive, I must say. It's fun to be here.
Absolutely. So what you're alluding to now is moving beyond the three-dimensional to step into what will become more clear to humanity as we progress, but this would be the bigger picture, the step of where we are progressing as a species?
I'm addressing the fact that we have the opportunity to ascend with the Earth as she is moving into a higher density, a lighter density. Many of the things that we take for granted now of third dimension, the structures we have built, the governments, the economies, the educational institutions, science, all of this is undergoing dramatic revisions. The old is falling apart. The new is taking its place. So I see us that we have a choice, an individual choice. We can continue to hang on to the third dimension. Now, third dimension to me is this fear-based thing that we've had going on for thousands of years. Fear-based in that it's so fearful to many people that they really don't have choice in their life. They are just reacting to the latest fear, to the latest announcement, to the latest pronouncement from the media, from the government. And so they are just moving from day to day in their lives, reacting to one thing after another. It's only after we get to a certain level of vibration. Raising our vibrations is extremely important. So if we can get to a higher level of vibration, we can then go and step back away from all these things that are happening, all the things that people are talking about, that the media wants us to go and focus on. If we can step back from that, what my friends from Athabantian, and most of them are from Andromeda, what they're saying to me is walk tall. Not that we're better than anyone else, but simply that we see more clearly that coming from a place of love, we can walk tall and allow all these things around us to simply take place. So that's the focus of my work. It's quite different than where I was 3 years ago. I did a number of radio interviews over a 3 or 4 year time then. I was speaking primarily about disclosure. I was speaking about the presence of our, or soon-to-be presence of our friends from other star systems coming here. I now have come to understand that there are about 1 million of these star peoples walking amongst us on a daily basis. I now have come to understand that many of us are what I will call star seeds, in that we chose to come here in this incarnation to go and help with the ascension of the planet, if you will, the ascension of humanity. And there are about 100 million star seeds here on the planet.
So just for
it's an exciting time to be alive. It's just wonderful.
Absolutely. Maybe just for quick clarification, you have stated that you figure there are about 1 million of our galactic families walking. Now, there are negative members of our galactic family who are operating within the cabal, and then there are the members of our galactic families who are operating from the light and working to change. And I'm going on the assumption that you are referring, of course, to those who are working for positive, love-based change on our planet.
Good point, Jeff. Yes, I'm talking about the approximately 1 million who are here from a very beneficial, a very benign point of view. And they have
found themselves in positions within the government, within different institutions, in a very quiet way, not public, very quiet. But they are very human-like. You cannot distinguish them from you and me, but they're doing marvelous behind-the-scenes work. As to those that are, I like, instead of saying that they are bad or evil or something like that, I like to refer to them as they are in service to self. They are totally worried about what's happening to them, to their race and that type. They are diminishing in number. In the last 2 months, there have been tens of thousands of them transported off this planet. They have been rounded up and moved off. And I can give you some references as to where that's happening and who's doing it and that type of thing. Some of my friends from Andromeda have been involved in that type of an action. Some of the so-called earthquakes have simply been destructions of the underground bases of the cabal-related star people. From not Andromeda, not the Pleiades, the Sirians, and so on, but some of the other star systems that are still operating from a very self-centered point of view. So yes, there are two different types of beings here on the planet, non-indigenous peoples, but the dark is diminishing daily. They're being rounded up and transported off. And those of the light are coming. I don't happen to think we're going to have disclosure the way people are talking about it. I think disclosure is something that would be so revolutionary for the government to admit that disclosure is happening, because then they would have to admit that they had hundreds of years of involvement with these off-planet races, and that everyone in the top echelon of the government understands to some extent, some more than others, that these beings are here and are present and have been working with them not for the good of the people but for their own selfish purposes. That type of thing, I believe, will simply result in the fact that our government, particularly the United States, is not going to go and admit to contact until it has become a de facto event, which could happen very quickly. The information I have is that we're going to have more and more of the star people coming to the planet and simply walking around, making themselves known on a one-on-one basis, kind of sitting down, having a cup of coffee and saying, "Hi, did you know I'm from Andromeda? I look a little different, don't I, now that you really look at me?"
So do they take the cappuccinos or the espressos?
They absolutely love the food we have on this planet because it's quite highly developed. And so it's a great duty for them to come here and walk amongst us. Most of them, as you probably know, are of a higher fifth dimensional type. They don't need food. That's not part of who they are. But they can materialize a body to walk around, and that's fine. So I don't know whether it's cappuccino, latte, chai, whatever it might be.
Now, I know you wanted to get into a little bit of the timeline that you've been hearing, and I'm kind of gathering from what you've said up to this point that maybe a transitional government doesn't factor in as much into your timeline, or is it perhaps just in a different form?
I believe that we will see the United States break into several pieces, and each of these pieces will have its own transitional government. I think the days of the federal government are numbered.
And that would seem to support what Pentagon whistleblower Drake has indicated with the documents apparently that are circulating now, that each state has begun filing its independence from the Union. So that is intriguing indeed. Now, I think many people would be curious to know how you get your information and from whom.
Yes. This information started with my first book, Trillion, and I received information in order to write that book, and that began in 1997. I had gone back to school to get a master's in psychology, and this book spilled out of my word processor. Not fully finished, but it was a book. What's interesting about the three books, Trillion, Decimal, and One, is that slowly everything I was writing about back in those days, they got published in the early 2000, 2004. One was published in 2010. All the things that I was writing about at that time are all coming true. It's I didn't at that time label things as being a forecast of what was going on. I simply was writing what I thought was, oh, this is interesting, so I put it down. Since I finished the book One, which was published in 2009, I have begun to receive information from a group from Andromeda. They are aboard the starship Athabantian, which is at a distance about twice that of the moon. You won't be able to see the ship. It's cloaked. There are, depending upon which day, there are several thousand people aboard this ship. And so I receive my information from three different Andromedans. They are fifth dimensional beings. And then I also get information from three different celestials. Some people would call them angels. All of this is posted on my website, cosmicparadigm.com. And I did the initial postings on a website there called Mark's Corner, because I couldn't quite believe I was getting this information. I thought, well, if I put it over in something called Mark's Corner, nobody will find it. What happened is it now gets translated into about 10 different languages, including Norwegian and Bulgarian and Korean and so on. So I wasn't able to hide. And then about a year ago, I started getting different kind of messages, and those are posted at Athabantian. Part of the messages that have come in recently led me to settle in Pagosa Springs, Colorado, to start the Institute of Light. And more recently, I've been directed to go and hold a conference this August, and people can find out about that on the website cosmicparadigm.com. And it is something, these are not my ideas. I mean, I get these, and it's kind of like, you want me to do what? You want me to start an institute? Institute? Everybody's done an institute. I have nothing more. So then they began to go and say, sure, we'll help you. We'll do this. And then they came along with a conference. And I said, conference? What do I know about doing a conference? They said, that's okay. We'll be there. We'll help you. We'll show you the way. So it's been a very magical life I have led these last few years. I'm very much, happy to cooperate with them. I think I have choices, but they're very persistent. If I say, well, maybe I'll think about this, they say, well, have you thought about it yet?
Of course, their time frame is much different than ours. They don't have a time frame.
Yes, it is. And they keep using this word soon. Okay, I ask them, well, now, when are some of these changes going to happen? And they'll say, well, soon. But you have to understand these are beings that, have been alive for several hundred years, and so soon is in a totally different frame of reference from our soon. Anyway, we're going to have a lot of fun at the Transformation 2012 conference. It's directed specifically to helping people raise their vibrations in light of events and learn how to maintain those higher vibrations so that they can walk tall as things are taking place. That's the total purpose of Transformation 2012, helping people understand the need to do it, experience it, and then learning the techniques. We're going to do several workshops with very experienced people who know how to raise vibrations and teach people how to maintain those experiences.
Great. And that conference is being organized in Pagosa Springs, Colorado. The dates of that conference are August 16th, 17th, and 18th. Is that correct?
Correct. And you can find more information at cosmicparadigm.com.
Excellent. So you mentioned that the workshop aims to help people to raise their vibration, and perhaps you could help any new listeners to understand a little bit better, what does it mean to raise one's vibration?
Well, the vibration of fear, which is the predominant vibration on the planet at this point in time, becoming less so, but still the predominant vibration, is a very low, slow vibration. Some people call it a dark vibration. But the vibration of fear is what holds you back from being who you really are. So now if you can raise that vibration just a little bit, your personal vibration, it's like an athlete feeling like they're in the zone. It's like having a wonderful experience out in nature. Those are practical applications of raising your vibration. And you get a wonderful feeling out of that. You can do some of it if you are adept at meditating. There are several different techniques we're going to be addressing at the workshop, because not any one technique applies to everybody. If you can get the vibration high enough, the so-called fourth and fifth dimensions, then you can truly walk through. Remember the movie Little Big Man, where the Indian chief simply walked through the battle and nothing bothered him? It's that kind of vibration we're talking about. That's the vibration I'm talking about.
Well, it certainly does sound it's something to look so much forward to, and you can almost feel the converging energies rising across the planet. The consciousness level just seems to be soaring. So we've got maybe about a minute and a half left, Mark. Is there anything you would just like to put in as the final message to our listeners?
Yes. I would like to say that there are many events that are going to happen now in the short term. And it's very important that people understand you have a choice. You can either go to fear or you can go to love. If you go to love, you will find that life will be so much easier and the events will not impact you nearly as much. And the final thing is, we all incarnated here at this moment in time to be here to experience this wonderful transformation of Earth and her humans. Enjoy the trip. It's great.
Well, that's wonderful. So, and thank you very much for joining the show, Mark, sharing your perspectives, and we will certainly do our best to get some information out about your workshop, Transformation 2012, a celebration of light, being organized by the Institute of Light and Mark Kimmel. The workshop and conference is being held in Pagosa Springs, Colorado, August 16th, 17th, and 18th during the summer. And it's going to be probably a wonderful experience. Perhaps some galactic family members may show up, who knows, energetically, if nothing else. And you can certainly look forward to having your vibration lifted and learning some of the techniques preparing. Thank you very much, Mark.
It's been my pleasure, Jeff. Thank you so much. You're doing a wonderful job.
Thank you kindly. Blessings be to you and Heidi.
Blessings to all your listeners. Bye for now.
Great. So that is the unfolding consciousness news around the world this week. Cosmic Vision News is a part of the InLightRadio group of programs heard at this local time each week. Thank you for sharing your time with me. I'm Jeffrey West, reminding you not to ask what you can take from the world that exists, but rather, what can you offer to the world that is awakening? Until our next moment of now, stay grounded in love and keep your eyes to the skies. Disclosure is unfolding all around you. Namaste.
This is Thank You White Knights, and I hope you enjoyed this video. For updates and to go to the source of this article, please find the link below the YouTube screen while watching in YouTube. For the latest news and updates, please visit thankyouwhitenights.com.